Hi, students. This is Dr. Menchaca Banyulo. We're going to read today the infamous story of David and Bathsheba. There's a lot of questions about this part of the text in the sense that there's a lot of interpretations. Is this adultery? Is this a rape? That kind of thing. So, this is also kind of one of the key moments of uh, David kind of falling away, whether it's through adultery or through rape. Um, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to read it to you. This is the turning point, really, of the entire narrative of David and brings up for us in political philosophy a lot of themes about political corruption, um, abuse of power, that kind of thing. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 11. And it happened at the turn of the year, at the time the king sallied forth, that David sent out Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. And David was sitting in Jerusalem. And it happened at eventide that David arose from his bed and walked about on the roof of the king's house. And he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired after the woman, and the one he sent said, Why, this is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, wife of Uriah the Hittite. And David sent messengers and fetched her, and she came to him, and he lay with her, she having just cleaned herself of her impurity, and she returned to her house. So, just to point out, her having cleaned herself of her impurity, the bath that David witnesses, is a ritual bath that in this time, in this religion, would be required after the woman who had menstruated. And this is important because it means if she's menstruated, that she's not pregnant. And also, her husband is away at battle. So that's all really important information. And the woman became pregnant and sent and told David and said, I'm pregnant. And David sent to Joab, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah the Hittite to David. And Uriah came to him, and David asked how Joab fared, how the troops fared, and how the fighting fared. And David said to Uriah, Go down to your house and bathe your feet. And Uriah went out from the king's house, and the king's provisions came out after him. And Uriah lay at the entrance to the king's house with all the servants of his master, and he went not down to his house. And they told David, saying, Uriah did not go down to his house. And David said to Uriah, Look, you've come from a journey. Why have you not gone down to your house? And Uriah said to David, The ark and Israel and Judah are sitting in huts, and my master Joab and my master's servants are encamped in the open field. And shall I then come to my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? Just want to point out the similarities between this part where he's saying, it's not right for me to have these nice things when our countrymen don't. Is kind of a similar reasoning as we saw last time, when David feels bad about having such a nice place to live when the Lord is still living in the ark. By your life, Uriah says, by your very life, I will not do this thing. And David said to Uriah, Stay here today as well, and tomorrow I shall send you off. And Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day and the next, and David called him, and he ate before him and drank, and David made him drunk. And he went out in the evening to lie in the place where he lay with the servants of his master. But to his house he did not go down. And it happened in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter saying, "Put Uriah in the face of the fiercest battling and draw back, so that he will be struck down and die." And it happened, as Joab was keeping watch on the city, that he placed Uriah in the place where he knew there were valiant men. And the men of the city sallied forth and did battle with Joab, and some of the troops, some of David's servants, fell, and Uriah the Hittite also died. And Joab sent and told David all the details of the battle. And Joab charged the messenger, saying, "When you finish reporting all the details of the battle to the king, if it should happen that the king's wrath is roused, and he says to you, 'Why did you approach the city to fight? Did you not know they would shoot from the wall?' Who struck down Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal? Did not a woman fling down on him an upper millstone from the wall, and he died in Thebez? Why did you approach the wall? Then you shall say, 'Your servant Uriah the Hittite also died.'" And the messenger went and came and told David all that Joab had sent him for. And the messenger said to David, "The men overpowered us and sallied forth against us into the field, and then we were upon them back to the entrance of the gate. And they shot at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's servants died, and your servant Uriah the Hittite also died." And the king said to the messenger, "Thus shall you say to Joab, 'Let this thing not seem evil in your eyes, for the sword devours sometimes one way, sometimes another. Battle all the more fiercely against the city and destroy it, and so rouse his spirits.'" And Uriah's wife heard that Uriah, her man, was dead, and she keened over her husband. Keening is wailing. And when the mourning was over, David sent and gathered her into his house, and she became his wife. And she bore him a son, and the thing that David had done was evil in the eyes of the Lord. And the Lord sent Nathan to David, and he came to him and said to him, "Two men there were in a single town. One was rich and the other poor. The rich man had sheep and cattle in great abundance, and the poor man had nothing save one little ewe that he had bought. And he nurtured her and raised her with him together with his sons. From his crust she would eat, and from his cup she would drink, and in his lap she'd lie, and she was to him like a daughter. And a wayfarer came to the rich man, and it seemed a pity to him to take from his own sheep and cattle to prepare for the traveler who'd come to him. So he took the poor man's ewe and prepared it for the man who'd come to him. And David's anger flared hot against the man, and he said to Nathan, "As the Lord lives, doomed is the man who's done this. And the poor man's ewe, he shall pay back fourfold, and as much as he's done this thing, and because he had no pity." And Nathan said to David, "You are the man. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, it is I who anointed you king over Israel, and it's I who saved you from the hand of Saul. And I gave you your master's house and your master's wives in your lap, and I gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that be too little, I would give you even as much again. Why did you despise the word of the Lord, to do what is evil in his eyes? Uriah the Hittite you struck down with a sword, and his wife you took for yourself as wife, and him you've killed by the sword of the Ammonites. And so now the sword shall not swear from your house evermore, seeing you've despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says the Lord, I'm about to raise up evil against you from your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your fellow man, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of this sun. For you did it in secret, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. And David said to Nathan, I've offended against the Lord. And Nathan said to David, the Lord has also remitted your offense. You shall not die. But since you surely spurn the Lord in this thing, the son born to you is doomed to die. And Nathan went to his house, and the Lord afflicted the child whom Bathsheba, wife of Uriah the Hittite, had borne David. He fell gravely ill. David implored God for the sake of the lad, and David fasted, and he came and spent the night lying on the ground. And the elders of his house rose over him to rouse him up from the ground. But he would not, nor did he partake of food with them. And it happened on the 7th day that the child died. And David's servants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead. For they said, look, while the child was alive, we spoke to him, and he did not heed our voice. And how can we say to him, the child is dead? He will do some harm. And David saw that his servants were whispering to each other, and David understood that the child was dead. David said to his servants, is the child dead? And they said, he's dead. And David rose from the ground and bathed and rubbed himself with oil and changed his garments and came into the house of the Lord and worshipped and came back to his house and asked that food be set out for him, and he ate. And his servants said to him, what is this thing that you've done? For the sake of the living child, you fasted and wept. And when the child was dead, you arose and ate food. And he said, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept. For I thought, who knows, the Lord may favor me and the child will live. And now that he's dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I'm going to him, and he will not come back to me. And David consoled his wife Bathsheba, and he came to her and lay with her. And she bore a son and called his name Solomon. And the Lord loved him, and he sent by the hand of Nathan the prophet and called his name Jedediah by the grace of the Lord. And Job battled against Rabbah of the Ammonites, and he captured the royal city. And Job sent messengers to David and said, I have battled against Rabbah. Yes, I captured the citadel of waters. And so now, assemble the rest of the troops and encamp against the city and capture it, lest it be I who capture the city and my name be called upon it. And David assembled all the troops and went to Rabbah and battled against it and captured it. And he took the crown of their king from his head, and its weight was a talent of gold with precious stones, and it was set on David's head. And the booty of the city he brought out in great abundance. And the people that were in it he brought out and set them to work with saws and iron threshing boards and iron axes, and he put them to the brick mold. Thus did he do to all the Ammonite towns. And David and all the troops with him returned to Jerusalem. So there's a lot in this text, and I'm not going to be able to get into all of it here. And also, part of the fun of class and stuff is hearing what you guys think and working together on what we bring out of the text. So I don't really want to get into too much detail, but I do want to just flag some things for you as you're considering it. So first of all, you should be remembering that Saul would send David into battle with the hope that he would die. And David would kind of always make it out of these situations. So this sort of underhanded way of doing basically a state sanctioned assassination of a private citizen is how we talk about it. I don't think, that's how they talk about it, but that's how we talk about it. That's already been done in the text. It was done by Saul, and Saul's terrible, right? So the fact that David is doing this is really bad. There's also something else I think to note, which is that David is in the middle of battle when he's doing this, but it's kind of clear he's become very successful um, in all the campaigns he's waged. He's also really materially successful, and by this point, you can contrast this man, this David, to the David from our previous reading, where David is sitting in the midst of his glorious palace, and he feels bad that he's in such a wonderful place, and that they don't have a temple for God. So he sees his benefit and his wealth as something that makes him reflect on what's going on around him, and he doesn't just see it as something he's entitled to. In this one, he's super entitled, right? He's even richer than before. And, he sees this woman and it's just like, I want her. Even though her husband is fighting a war for him, um, it's also really clear, because of the military success and how established he is and stuff, his court is doing really well. He likely has gotten from all these successful campaigns material things. So he's increasing in power, he's increasing in wealth. And this man just seems like a really different man. Um on the subject of Bathsheba, it's something I'm not an expert in. I don't think that a woman, well, I don't think any subject, right, seems to have a ton of say over what the king does with them. Though it's interesting to note that Uriah talks back to him. And also, like, some of his advisors do after his son dies, and they're like, why are you eating and feasting now? Like, so it does seem to be a certain level of autonomy, and we can talk about that. Um, but it's just not been the case even now, but especially in the past, that if a woman was selected by a powerful man, that she would be able to say no, like, to a king or whatever. Um, Now that doesn't mean that she isn't consenting. My point is that the fact that this happens doesn't really show much consent, because there's not, you know he is the king. um there's different parts of the text, that you can take in different ways. uh a footnote points out that she becomes very aggressive about getting one of her sons to become king. So maybe, she had her eye on power all along. But the thing Nathan tells David about the poor man and the rich man, that story, and the beloved lamb of this poor man that's taken from the king who has everything. I don't get, like, the impression from that Bathsheba is, like, looking to seduce the king. I mean, the way she's described is not just being really beloved of her husband, but also extremely vulnerable, extremely dependent, not anything predatory. In the Bible, lambs are never predatory, they're always victims. So that sort of imagination of the situation on the part of Nathan to get David to understand, that's, I think, one of the only characterizations I get of how the divine is seeing Bathsheba in the text. You can disagree with me on that, but that's just my 2 cents. Um, Finally, it's kind of interesting to me that when David loses his son, um, that he is so bereft, especially in this period of history. A king that had multiple wives, he wouldn't really be attached to his children's births in maybe the same way once you've had like an heir. Um, and so he is deeply, deeply invested in this child's life. Now, could it be because he wants to see if the Lord is really going to do as Nathan prophesied? And that's why he cares? Or is it because he has an attachment to his child? I bring this up because later on, um, you see a lot of strife among David's children. And it's a major question, I think, for us in the text and in our class to think about. He's a king, but he's also a father. What is he like as a father? And how are his failures as a father or his successes as a father impacting the kingdom?